The rich aroma of searing scallops curled through the kitchen, mingling with the soft murmur of laughter and the gentle clink of glasses from the dining room. Harbor's edge shimmered tonight, each corner glowing with a warmth I had painstakingly cultivated. This wasn't just a restaurant, it was a little universe of my own making, where flavors, light, and laughter collided in perfect harmony. Even amidst the whirlwind of orders, sizzling pans, and the relentless rhythm of service, I felt alive, my pulse sinking with the hum of the evening. Every plate that left the kitchen was a small testament to my passion, a quiet proof that all the chaos was worth it. Table 12 just ordered the special. Marcy, my head server, called from the pass. Heads up, it's that woman again. I barely glanced up, arranging a delicate portion of halibut with microgreens on a plate. Which woman? I asked, though a flicker of curiosity pricked at me. The one who's been coming 3 times this week. Always alone. Always dressed like she's stepping into a gala, Marcy said, smirking. And, surprise, surprise, scallops again. I kept my face neutral. I'd noticed her before. How could I not? She was like a diamond scattered among seashells, elegant, poised, impossible to ignore. Always alone, her posture flawless, her expression composed, yet a subtle melancholy clung to her, as if she was trying to savor herself, but failing just slightly. I shook off the thought. My life was complicated enough, without chasing mysteries that didn't belong to me. Still, as the night pressed on and the kitchen began to quiet, my eyes found her again, seated near the window. The dim light caught the dark waves of her hair cascading over her shoulders. She looked almost untouchable, yet tonight something was different. Her shoulders slumped ever so slightly, and her fingers lingered on the stem of her wine glass, tracing absent-minded patterns on the polished surface. She looked lonely. When Marcy returned, I spoke before she could ask. Send her the dessert sampler. On the house. Marcy raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. Minutes later, I watched her deliver a plate of miniature tarts. The woman's eyes widened in surprise, and for a heartbeat, her gaze flicked toward the kitchen. Our eyes met, just briefly, but enough to make heat creep into my cheeks. I quickly turned back to the stove, pretending nothing had happened. The next time she came in, I resolved that I wouldn't hide behind the kitchen. The restaurant was quieter, only half full. She sat at her usual spot by the window, staring at the water with a distant, almost wistful look. I took a deep breath, wiped my hands on my apron, and stepped over. Good evening, I said, striving for casual warmth. I hope everything's to your liking. She looked up, startled. Stormy gray eyes met mine, impossibly deep, as though she carried an entire world of unspoken stories behind them. I am, she said softly, voice smooth and refined, almost melodic. Thank you. I hesitated, my fingers tightening slightly on the edge of the chair I had half-gripped, then gestured toward the empty seat across from her. May I? Her lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile, and she nodded. Her eyes widened in surprise, but after a heartbeat, she nodded. I slid into the seat, suddenly hyper-aware of the flour smudges and sauce stains on my jacket, wishing I could somehow appear more composed. I've noticed you've been here a lot lately, I said, choosing my words carefully. I'm glad you enjoy the food. A faint smile curved her lips, soft and tentative. It's exceptional. All your scallops, in particular, they're the best I've ever had. High praise, I replied, warmth spreading through me despite my nerves. I'm Riley, by the way, chef and owner. Amara, she said, offering a small, delicate smile that softened then flickered with something heavier, almost fleeting. Nice to meet you, I said, my voice light, though I could feel the quiet intensity between us. A pause stretched, filled with unspoken words, as if she were weighing how much of herself to reveal. Finally, she spoke, her tone low, almost a whisper. This place has become a refuge for me. Peaceful, warm, safe. Her fingers brushed absently along the rim of her wine glass, eyes drifting toward the window, as though the shimmering water beyond held secrets she couldn't voice. I felt an unexpected tug in my chest, a protective impulse I hadn't anticipated. I'm glad you feel that way, I said softly. That's exactly what I wanted, a space where people could just breathe. Her gaze shifted to mine, searching, almost vulnerable. And, do you enjoy yourself, Riley? Caught off guard, I laughed a little too loudly, then shrugged. Most days. Running a restaurant is hard work, but it's my passion. Her expression softened, tinged with wistfulness. That must be nice, to have something that's yours. The subtle longing in her voice made me wonder about the shadows she carried behind those stormy gray eyes. I hesitated, then asked gently, "And you? What about you?" She offered a tight, polite smile. "Nothing as interesting as this. My life is complicated." I didn't press. Instead, I leaned back slightly and said lightly, "Well, if you ever want to escape those complications, you're always welcome here." Her eyes met mine, and for a fleeting moment, the sadness seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile warmth.
"Thank you, Riley."
"That means more than you know." From that night on, Amara became more than just a familiar face in the restaurant. She lingered after hours, perching at the bar while I cleaned up, sharing fragments of herself in quiet conversation. We talked about favorite foods, my journey as a chef, books she loved. Her personal life remained carefully guarded, and I respected that. Whatever weight she carried, she would share it when she was ready. One evening, after a particularly hectic night, I slid onto the stool beside her. She looked more relaxed than I'd ever seen her, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes softer. "Long night?" I asked, brushing a few crumbs from my apron. "Always," she murmured, lips curving faintly in a wry smile. "Seeing you here makes it worth it," I said, grinning despite myself. Her cheeks flushed lightly, eyes dropping to her glass, and I noticed the faint tension in her shoulders ease. "You're too kind, Riley," she murmured, almost shyly. "It's not kindness," I said softly, leaning a fraction closer. "I like having you here." She looked up at me then, her gaze lingering, quiet but intense, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time, the barrier around her didn't seem quite so impenetrable, and I wondered how long it would take for her to trust me fully, and what it would take to help her carry whatever she had been hiding all this time. For a brief, fragile moment, the air between us shifted, tense, electric, and impossible to ignore. Then she looked away, her expression tightening like a shuttered window. "I should go," she said abruptly, standing, her movements sharp, measured. "Amara, thank you for everything." "Good night," I murmured, my voice quieter than intended, almost swallowed by the hum of the emptying restaurant. And just like that, she was gone, leaving me alone with a swirl of questions I couldn't answer, and a hollow ache in my chest. Later that week, long after the last guest had left and the lights had dimmed, the door creaked open. She appeared, pale, drawn, shivering against the night wind that swept in behind her. My heart clenched, tight and urgent. "Amara?" I whispered, my voice catching as the door swung fully open, carrying with it the chill of the night and the weight of unspoken fears. I stepped aside, letting her slip past me into the warm embrace of the restaurant. "Amara, what's wrong?" She didn't answer at once. Instead, she moved slowly, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, as if trying to hold herself together, as if the world outside had shattered her into fragile pieces. The dim light caught faint smudges of mascara under her eyes, subtle traces of tears she had tried so desperately to conceal. I needed to see you," she whispered finally, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf caught in a storm. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. So much vulnerability, so much trust laid bare. My chest tightened, a protective ache blooming deep within me. I guided her gently to a stool at the bar and poured her a glass of water. "Take your time," I said softly, sitting across from her, letting her set the pace. She stared at the glass for a long moment, fingertips brushing the rim, before her voice came, low and almost brittle. "He knows." My stomach lurched. "Ethan?" She nodded, lips pressed into a thin line. I don't know how, but he's suspicious. Accused me of having an affair tonight. Said I've been distant, distracted." Her voice cracked on the last word, a trembling edge revealing more than she could contain. He grabbed my arm so hard I thought it would bruise. A flash of anger flared hot and immediate, coursing through me like wildfire. "He hurt you?" "No." She shook her head quickly, though the tension coiled in her body said otherwise. "It's not like that. He's just angry. He doesn't understand." I clenched my fists under the bar, jaw tight. "Amara, you don't have to go back there. Not ever. Stay here. Stay with me." Her eyes widened, fear flickering like lightning behind her stormy gray gaze. "I can't, Riley. If I leave, he'll come after me. He'll ruin me. His money, his influence, you have no idea what he's capable of." Then let me help you, I said, my voice firm, unwavering. You don't have to face this alone. For a long, suspended moment, she just stared at me, fear and longing warring in her eyes, unspoken battles etched into every line of her face. Then, as though some invisible barrier inside her cracked and crumbled, she leaned forward across the bar. Her lips met mine in a tentative, trembling kiss, soft, desperate, overflowing with every emotion she couldn't articulate. I felt the weight of her loneliness, her fear, her yearning, all pressed against me in that fragile contact. When she pulled back, tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes, glinting in the warm bar light. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Riley, she whispered, standing abruptly, the tension in her body like a coiled spring ready to snap. And yet, in that brief, fragile exchange, I knew something irreversible had begun. Don't apologize, I said quickly, grabbing her hand before she could step away. My fingers lingered over hers, grounding us both. I care about you, Amara, more than I should. Her stormy gray eyes searched mine, flickering with a mix of fear and something softer, something dangerously tender. Maybe, but I can't help it, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I care about you too, but this is dangerous for both of us. Then let me decide what's dangerous for me, I said firmly, holding her gaze. You deserve happiness, Amara. And if being with me makes you happy, then we'll figure out the rest together. She didn't answer immediately, but her hand stayed in mine, warm and steady. That was enough for now. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of stolen glances, whispered words, and quiet tension. Amara began visiting more often, usually after hours, when the restaurant was emptied of the usual clatter and chatter. We cooked side by side, sharing the kitchen space like a secret world of our own, laughing softly under the dim glow of overhead lights. She never fully let down her guard, yet I could see her reclaiming pieces of herself, small fragments of freedom glinting through the shadow she carried. Slowly, she began to speak about Ethan, the control, the constant criticism, the suffocating isolation. No wonder my little restaurant had become a sanctuary. Here, she could simply be. One night, we ended up sitting on the kitchen floor, chocolate mousse smeared on our fingers, giggling quietly at our mess. Her voice grew heavy as she shared a memory. The first time he humiliated me in front of his friends, she said, her tone hollow. He laughed afterward, said I was too sensitive. But I remember thinking, is this what my life will always be? Being the punchline. I reached for her hand, holding it firmly. You don't have to live like that anymore. You're stronger than you think, Amara. Tears glimmered in her eyes, catching the soft light. I'm only strong because of you, she whispered. Her words pressed against my chest like a gentle weight. I didn't know how to respond, so I kissed her instead, slow, tender, letting the motions speak the things words could not. But our bubble of safety couldn't last forever. Ethan began showing up unannounced, first at social gatherings, his charm masking menace beneath the surface, and then, increasingly, at the restaurant. The tension between him and Amara was electric, impossible to ignore. The first time, he wore polite concern like armor, charming and composed, but every glance toward Amara was a silent accusation. The second time, he was less subtle. It was a Friday night. The restaurant was packed, every table buzzing with conversation, forks clinking, glasses tipping. The door opened, and my stomach dropped. Ethan stepped inside, perfectly tailored, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Amara. Amara, he said, voice sharp enough to pull a few curious glances. We need to talk. She froze, the color draining from her face. My heart thudded violently in my chest. Is there a problem? I asked, stepping out of the kitchen, keeping my tone calm, careful. Ethan's smile was cold, precise, measured. I believe this is between me and my wife. She doesn't look like she wants to talk, I said, moving closer, trying to shield her with my presence. Amara stood abruptly, chair scraping across the floor. It's fine, Riley. I'll go. Her words trembled, almost breaking under the weight of the situation. I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to insist she stay, knowing that any wrong move could escalate things further. You don't have to, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but Ethan's expression darkened instantly. Stay out of this, he growled, a sharp edge in his tone that made the air between us feel heavy. Before I could respond, Amara gripped my arm, her fingers trembling slightly. Please, she whispered, eyes pleading, almost desperate. "Let me handle it." I watched helplessly as she walked out with him, my stomach twisting into a knot I couldn't untangle. The restaurant suddenly felt impossibly quiet, the warmth of the kitchen replaced by an echoing emptiness. Hours later, she returned, slamming the door just enough to let the tension sweep in with her. Her face was streaked with tears, mascara smudged beneath her stormy gray eyes. "He threatened to ruin you," she said immediately, voice breaking. "He said he'd destroy your business, your reputation. He knows, Riley, about us." I didn't hesitate. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight, feeling the tremble in her body, and letting my presence be her anchor. "Let him try," I said firmly. "I won't let him scare me, and I won't let him keep you trapped." Her lips trembled against my shoulder and she whispered, "But what if he's right? What if loving you costs me everything?" I cupped her face in my hands, meeting her gaze. "Then we rebuild. Together. Step by step, day by day, I'll be here." Her eyes searched mine, swimming with fear and fragile hope. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she admitted, voice barely audible. "You are," I said firmly. "And I'll be." The next day, Amara made the hardest decision of her life. She told Ethan she wanted a divorce. The days that followed were public, messy, and merciless. His attempts to control, intimidate, and humiliate her were relentless. Yet with every challenge, Amara did not break. She grew stronger, reclaiming pieces of herself he had tried to steal, her courage shining brighter with each passing moment. Through it all, I was there, her anchor, her safe harbor, steady against the storm. One quiet night, in the dim glow of the kitchen after the last table had left, she turned to me. A soft smile tugged at her lips, delicate and genuine. "I've never felt more alive than I do right now, and it's because of you, Riley." I brushed a strand of hair from her face, my heart swelling. "You're the strongest person I know, Amara." She reached for my hand, fingers entwining with mine. For the first time in weeks, it felt like we were both exactly where we were meant to be. "I'm just lucky to be part of your life," she murmured, her voice quiet, intimate. Then she kissed me, slow, deep, and unhurried. Her lips pressed softly against mine, carrying with them relief, love, and the quiet triumph of survival. In that moment, the weight of the world seemed to vanish, leaving only us. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we could face them together. When the day of Amara's divorce finally arrived, she walked into Harbor's Edge with a quiet, undeniable triumph shining in her eyes. It wasn't loud or boastful. It was the kind of victory that came from surviving something that had once seemed impossible. Words weren't necessary. I could see it in the way she carried herself, shoulders lifted, step steady, no longer burdened by invisible chains. "I'm free," she said simply, standing in the doorway as sunlight spilled behind her, haloing her in golden light. I set down the pan I had been holding, wiped my hands on my apron, and crossed the room. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close as if to keep the world from touching her again. And in that embrace, I realized we had both emerged stronger, whole, and ready to face whatever came next together. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered, pressing my forehead to hers. Her smile lit up the room, a radiant beacon that made everything else fade away. But I knew the truth. Ethan wouldn't let go easily. The days that followed were a delicate dance of rebuilding and rediscovery. Amara began coming to the restaurant not just as a guest, but as a part of the life I had built. At first, it was small tasks, tidying menus, folding napkins, but soon she was rolling dough, tasting sauces, experimenting with recipes, her laughter ringing through the kitchen like music. "I think I miss my calling," she joked one afternoon, flour dusting her cheek, a loose braid falling across her shoulder, eyes sparkling with mischief. "You're a natural," I said, watching her shape a delicate pastry. "But I have to say, you make a better partner than a sous chef." She laughed, light and carefree, and my heart stuttered at the word. "Partner." The weight of it sank in, sudden and beautiful. But then I looked at her, at the warmth in her gaze, and all doubts melted away. "Yeah," I said softly. "Partner." Her cheeks flushed, and she leaned over the counter to kiss me, sweet, lingering, leaving me breathless. "Partner it is," she whispered, eyes sparkling like sunlight on water. Ethan's attempts to retaliate came in waves, veiled threats, whispers in social circles, lawyers demanding assets, but Amara met each challenge with quiet, unwavering strength. "He doesn't scare me anymore," she said one night, wine glass in hand, sitting across from me in my small apartment, the city lights spilling in through the window. "He used to control everything, but now I see him for what he is. Just a man desperate to hold on to something that's already gone." "Already lost," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're incredible, Amara. I don't know how you do it." "I do it because of you," she replied simply. "You showed me what it means to be loved without strings, without fear. You gave me the courage to reclaim my life." Her words left me speechless. I could only pull her close, kiss her, letting every ounce of love, admiration, and relief pour into that single, perfect moment. The true turning point came at the grand reopening of the restaurant. Months of renovations, careful planning, and hope had led to this night. The air buzzed with excitement, guests chatting, glasses clinking, candles flickering on every table. Amara moved through it all with grace and confidence, my heart swelling with pride at the way she carried herself, radiant and unafraid. Then Ethan appeared, uninvited. The room seemed to hush as he strode through the doorway, arrogance etched into every line of his face. "Amara," he said, voice cutting through the soft hum of conversation, commanding attention. "We need to talk." She turned to face him, jaw set, eyes blazing with fire and defiance. "There's nothing left to say, Ethan," she said firmly, her voice steady and unyielding. "You don't belong here." A murmur ran through the crowd as she held her ground, the tension thick and palpable. I moved closer, hand brushing hers in silent support, feeling the surge of pride and love swell inside me. This was her moment, her victory. And this time, no one could take it away. He sneered, glancing at me with disdain. "And you think this is better? A second-rate restaurant, with someone who could never give you what I did." The words hit like a blade. Before I could even respond, Amara stepped forward, every ounce of her radiance and strength shining through. Her voice was steady, clear, and resolute. "This restaurant is 1,000 times more meaningful than anything you ever gave me, because it's built on love and respect, not control. You don't scare me anymore. You're just a bitter man who can't accept that he lost." The room stirred with quiet murmurs, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. She stood fearless, luminous, finally free of the chains that had bound her for so long. Ethan opened his mouth, but she didn't give him the chance. She turned on her heel, took my hand, and we walked away together, leaving him powerless for the first time in years. The weeks that followed were filled with the peace we had longed for. Amara moved in with me, and her laughter filled the small apartment, making it feel like home. She baked daily, dreamed up desserts, experimented with flavors that became instant hits at the restaurant, infusing every corner of my life with warmth and joy. One evening, as the sun dipped below the water, painting the sky in molten gold, I closed the restaurant early and led her to the park where we had shared our first kiss. Fairy lights twinkled in the trees, casting a soft, golden glow around us. "What's all this?" she asked, eyes wide, cheeks flushed with curiosity and delight. "Just a little something I put together," I said, taking her hand and guiding her to a blanket laid carefully on the grass. A basket of her favorite foods waited, the scent of fresh bread and ripe fruit mingling with the evening air. We ate and talked as the sky shifted from gold to deep indigo, stars beginning to twinkle above like scattered diamonds. Laughter, soft and free, rose between us, unburdened by fear or expectation. When dinner ended, I took her hands in mine, heart pounding. "Amara, I never expected you to walk into my life, but now I can't imagine it without you. You're the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met, and I'm grateful every single day that you chose me." Tears shimmered in her eyes, catching the light of the fairy lights, and she smiled. "Riley, I love you," she whispered. "I do," I said simply, "and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." She didn't reply with words. Instead, she leaned in, arms wrapping around my neck, kissing me slow and deep, a kiss full of promises, trust, and the relief of battles won. When she pulled back, her eyes shone brighter than the stars above. "I love you too," she whispered, voice trembling with joy. "More than I ever thought possible." Hand in hand, we walked through the park that night, the path illuminated by soft lights, our shadows blending into one. The future stretched before us, bright, full of promise. The past, with its pain and control, no longer held sway over us. And as her laughter rang through the night, light and unrestrained, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. We had found our forever in each other.